Well, hey guys, I'm Nick and welcome back to Sci-Finatics. Well, today we're talking about Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Episode 2 of Season 2, entitled Ad Astra Per Aspera. To the stars through difficulties. This was our big courtroom drama episode with the trial of Una and her place within Starfleet as an Illyrian and the repercussions of hiding all that backstory of hers. And this was one of those Star Trek episodes that kind of goes along the lines of, you know, court-martial in TOS or Measure of a Man, Next Generation. The Drumhead, other, you know, really good courtroom drama style episodes that have always played out throughout the history of Star Trek. And this one kind of, I guess, filled in the same sort of criteria as most of those preceding courtroom drama style episodes. Now, although this episode was really well written and quite engaging and an interesting courtroom drama episode, I was a little bit surprised that there was no B story. Normally an episode like this, you'd have, say, the courtroom drama as your A story, and there'd be something else going on with the ship or the crew or whatever that might encompass a B story. There was no B story to this episode. It was all A story. So even though it was a interesting trial and an interesting court case and everything that did capture my attention, the episode probably ran a little bit slower than usual in the pace department as a result of that no B-story side of the plot. We were with Una's trial for the entire episode and we never kind of diverged from that. So even though the court case and the trial had some interesting twists and turns and well-written speeches and a bit of soapboxing going on and everything, and interesting anecdotes from the past of Starfleet, it definitely had a more leisurely pace to it. So let's go through Episode 2, Season 2, Strange New Worlds, Ad Astra Per Aspera, and see what it had to offer. The episode begins with a flashback scene with Una as a teenager. She's broken her leg, looks like it's infected, and her genetic modifications are kind of kicking in, and her parents are kind of debating as to how they're going to seek medical help without her status as a augment being exposed. We obviously get Captain Batel, Captain Pike's, I guess, love interest, taking up the leadership of the prosecution case in this trial, which is sort of a little bit unusual. I would have thought there would have been, you know, a bit of a conflict of interest or something there by having somebody who's actively involved in a relationship with Una's commanding officer as the lead prosecutor in the case. It kind of, struck me as maybe a little bit odd. Captain Batel obviously wants Una to take a deal. Una doesn't want to take a deal. She wants to go to trial and everything because she doesn't want to basically be out of Starfleet, which is fair enough. We see Pike off-world, obviously on a planet of Illyrians who can quite happily breathe the atmosphere, but Pike can't, so he's got to wear a breathing apparatus and everything, which is quite interesting. We don't get to see, Starfleet travel to worlds that don't have M-class atmospheres too often, so it makes quite an interesting point of difference to have an environment that isn't breathable by humans. And Pike, of course, manages to convince Nira, a fellow Illyrian, to take up Una's case. She seems to be a pretty good lawyer. She's pretty sought after. She's got a bit of a reputation across the galaxy as a pretty good counsellor. So she's going to do what she can to get Una off. We see Nira and Una turning down the deal that Captain Batel has offered. They considered it a pretty good deal, but no, we don't want that at all. We want everything wiped clean and Una to come back into Starfleet without any kind of disgrace and everything. So the deal is turned down, and Captain Batel and Pike, their relationship, maybe is a little bit strained because of this. Pike's allegiance is to his first officer, despite having a bit of a somewhat casual relationship with Captain Batel. Captain Batel not too keen on the fact that the very good deal that she put forward was cast aside, so she's going for the maximum penalty of 20 years imprisonment, which seems a little bit harsh, but I guess she was hoping for it to be pretty cut and dry, to take the deal and there wouldn't be any fuss. But no, we don't want to go there, so right, okay, out with the big guns, and she's looking at a pretty hefty jail term. There's a few scenes in this episode in the, I guess you call it observation. Is it observation lounge? Probably not the observation lounge. It's sort of an observation lounge, I suppose. It's sort of a bit of a, 60s-esque style bar and everything where they can sit and have drinks and relax and everything. We've got Pike in there discussing things with Patel. We get Ortegas in there with Mbenga watching Spock and the other Vulcan basically just sitting across from each other saying not very much, and Ortegas going to a great comical effort to put words in their mouths and basically mock Vulcans quite a bit, which I thought was quite a funny scene, the way she sort of, they're just sitting there basically not moving, not sort of saying too much, and she's voicing the characters for them, which I thought was quite amusing. And then the fact that Spock comes over at the end and kind of says, I'm sorry you had to witness that, like there was basically some massive blow-up fight with swearing and name-calling and everything. But they were just sitting there essentially looking at each other across the table. From Spock's point of view, it was a massive brawl. So I thought that was quite a nice counterpoint. I thought that's what a Vulcan full-on argument looks like. This episode did have quite a lot of talking heads in it. Obviously, we mentioned before that it was just the A story. There was no B story to the plot. So we kind of just went from talking head to talking head. If they weren't on the trial, talking heads. We got characters out in the ship having discussions over the table, talking heads. In the quarters, talking heads. Just talky. There's a lot of talking in this episode. The trial begins, and interesting to note that the set for the courtroom is essentially the Federation headquarters set from Star Trek Discovery that's just been redressed. They've used pretty much the exact same set. They've obviously keyed different images out the window. So rather than being space, it's San Francisco Harbour, and they've changed a few little set pieces here and there with the timber backing behind the judges and everything. But it's pretty clear that it's basically just the reused Discovery Federation headquarters set. So I guess it's the economy of filmmaking, I suppose. So we also see our characters' dress uniforms are very much steeped in the history of what we saw in TOS. When there was a couple of courtroom-based episodes and our characters had to don their dress uniforms, they were pretty close. They were pretty close to what we saw Kirk and Spock and Bones and everything wearing in past Star Trek episodes. So I thought that was quite good that they maintained that consistency in terms of the, I guess you'd call it the sort of, floral, the little sort of almost like flower-esque kind of way they display their medals and everything on their dress uniforms. That was quite similar to the TOS style, so I guess it's good that they've kept that theme going there. Even the little light up circular armrest thing they put their hand on to take the oath not to lie, I think is exactly the same, which is a good consistency as well. Neera gives her opening address, and then Admiral April is put on the stand to testify and everything. And we get some interesting conversation here about the Prime Directive and how Starfleet officers basically seem to pick and choose when they follow different Starfleet orders. So why should the order regarding augments be any different? Obviously, there's all these occasions where April had disobeyed the Prime Directive in history as serving as the Enterprise's captain before Pike. And it would seem that all of these instances are what Neera's using as fuel to the case about, if you're going to just pick and choose what rules you obey at what times, then surely we can, let off. Neera gets pretty soapboxy and stuff. She wants to take Una's trial and turn it into a way of exonerating all Illyrians, not just letting Una off. So I'm not sure Una's too happy about trying to turn her trial into a bigger political issue. And she accuses her of getting a bit too soapboxy and everything in that regard. But obviously at the same time she uses a few quite interesting and good examples over the history of Earth and everything, about discrimination and everything, which kind of, play into the heart of this episode. Next we see Lan and Spock and Mbenga take the stand as well, giving plenty of glowing references about her history and career and everything amongst the other crew members there on board the Enterprise. And I love the fact that they incorporated the short track, the Q&A short track that where we saw Spock's very first outing on board the Enterprise, joining the ship as an ensign, and Spock and Una getting trapped in the turbo lift where Una sings some, I think it's Gilbert and Sullivan from Pirates of Penzance, the modern Major General song from that musical number. And I'm glad that they kind of incorporated that history into this trial. I thought that was quite good. That the fact that Spock says, I always thought she was hiding something, and you think, oh, he's about to give her up. He's about to use his Vulcan I can't tell a lie routine and dob her in. But no, he just comes back with she's a bit of a fan of Gilbert and Sullivan musicals. So I thought that was a good reference back to that very first, Short Trek episode, which was great. Initially, there's some contention there as to whether Lan might be the leak of who kind of dobbed Una into Starfleet about her history, because she did a personal log and she kind of fears somebody hack her personal log to retrieve this information. But then Una takes the stand, and we find out pretty soon after that she basically dobbed herself in. She was sick of, lying to Starfleet and having all of her backstory hidden from everybody. So she basically was the leak of her own information, which sort of strikes me as a little bit odd, because surely you would know what you're going to be up for by doing that. And I kind of get the fact that she didn't want to hide in the shadows anymore, but at the same time, you wouldn't be completely naive to think that it wasn't going to come back and bite you in the butt. There's some interesting parallels here, talking about Lan's heritage and her being a relation to Khan Noonien Singh, and then how that sort of perhaps entered into her psychoses about whether she gave her up or what the right thing to do is and all that sort of stuff, because she's sort of worried about her genetics and everything as to whether she's going to suddenly snap and become a maniacal supervillain or anything like that. But obviously Starfleet don't have rules regarding the offspring or the distant relatives of augments. They just have a problem with the augments themselves. But yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how much of the genetic material is passed on. But still, I thought that was a warranted reference there. We get some nice stories from Una on the stand about augment discrimination over the years and what her family had to kind of go through and strive to protect her against the discrimination, and how they had to move cities, and how there was the cities on her planet were segregated, and there was a augment and non-augment city and everything. So there's definitely some interesting themes brought up in this episode about discrimination and about class division and segregation and everything. That have, obviously these are themes that have been with us for many years, and as Star Trek tends to do, is obviously shine a light on these kind of social issues in our society. We get the douchebag Vulcan taking the prosecutorial position, pushing Battelle out of the way so he can kind of change the focus of the trial to potentially getting Pike in trouble. He wants to get Pike basically thrown out of Starfleet as well, because he kind of went along with the whole cover-up. So everybody's a bit worried about that happening for a period of time, until Nira basically pulls out the asylum card from the history books of Starfleet regs and everything, to basically find all of these moments where basically the criteria that exists for an alien, I guess, to request asylum within Starfleet and the Federation, and she finds all of the examples where Una has ticked all the boxes that she needs to tick to basically say, yep, I've done all of the checks and balances, and therefore you can't throw me in jail, because if you look at all these moments where she's applied for this and talked to Pike here, and she was discriminated against and she was fearful of her life and all this sort of thing. Yep, tick, 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 tick. Come on into Starfleet, thank you very much. So even though Nira's wanting to sort of get all Illyrians let off, doesn't quite go that far, but we get Una off, which is the main thing. That was the main thing, and it's the beginning. It's the beginnings of conversations about maybe easing up on some of the rules and regs about augments, and maybe let's assess it on a case-by-case basis. If you like Khan, then you can piss off and you're not coming into Starfleet. But if you like Una, you're welcomed in with open arms. I think maybe, yes, assessing it a bit like that would be maybe a bit more wise, rather than just putting a blanket rule on nobody gets in under any circumstances. So yes, I think needs to be more of a case-by-case situation. Una wins the case. She comes back to the Enterprise. She gets a bit of a farewell from Nira and a thanks for all your help. And Pike's very relieved to have his first officer back. He gives Una a bit of a hug there. Bit of an uncharacteristic. It sort of seemed, I don't know, the hug kind of seemed a bit awkward to me. It was sort of just there's a tiny bit of awkwardness wrapped up in that hug from Pike. It was certainly warranted, but yet uncomfortable. So yeah, all in all, I enjoyed this episode. I think as far as courtroom drama style episodes of Star Trek goes, such as Measure of a Man, Drumhead, Court Martial, there's quite a few. Over the course of Starfleet history, even ones with Archer and Trip in the Klingons' homeworld, and obviously Star Trek 6 with Kirk and McCoy on trial in the Klingon courtroom as well. There've always been courtroom episodes of Star Trek, and I think this sort of sits amongst them quite nice. But yeah, I think maybe it was just perhaps a tiny bit on the slower pacing side, just because it was the A story only and no B story to cut back and forth with, as we normally would in this sort of kind of episode. But guys, let me know what you think. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Leave a message and let me know your impressions. If you haven't subscribed to Sci-Finatics yet, please don't be shy to do so. Click on that big subscribe button to stay current and up to date with all the latest Star Trek news on YouTube. And be sure to check out my merch store, where there's plenty of Star Trek themed t-shirts and hoodies and mugs and caps and everything to check out there. And they're always at great prices and everything, so be sure to check out those. And I'll be back really soon with my next video. I'll catch you guys soon.